ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Abidjan. Good afternoon and thank you for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio. Broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide at wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. First, our headline stories. Burkina Faso's Foreign Ministry summons the EU representative in Ouagadougou over remarks it says undermine state authority.
By acting this way, the European Parliament has violated the principle of non-interference. It is also a sign of contempt towards us.
Unidentified armed men attack a security post in northern Benin. In Ghana, recent flooding results in several deaths and building collapses.
So far, we have recorded 18 fatalities. These 18 fatalities are as a result of building collapses, drowning, mudslides, falling trees, and other unfortunate incidents.
And Nigerians in South Africa stage a protest over delay in evacuation arrangements as June deadline approaches. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Sankulu Jibril Janko.
Many thanks for joining us. The Newslink begins in Côte d'Ivoire. The government has held consultations with political parties and civil society groups ahead of the creation of a new electoral body. The talks followed the dissolution of the Independent Electoral Commission several months ago, as authorities move forward with plans to reform the country's electoral management system. Augustine Colley reports.
Major political parties in Côte d'Ivoire have joined talks with the government on reforms to the country's electoral system. Representatives of the ruling RHDP party, as well as opposition groups including the PDCR, the FPR, Generations Capables and COGEP took part in the consultations. During the meeting, Prime Minister Rabah Begre Membe unveiled a proposed new electoral framework built around three key institutions.
It will be an electoral mechanism capable of guaranteeing the integrity of the practical organization of the vote, the accuracy of vote counting, the transparency of the announcement of results, and the credibility of the overall supervision of the process. Secondly, it will further strengthen confidence at every critical stage of the electoral process. Thirdly, it will ensure neutrality in its composition, remain professional in its operations, and always be transparent and credible in its decisions. It will comply with the law and remain accessible to citizens.
The government says that the reforms are aimed at strengthening confidence in the electoral process. Political parties and civil society groups welcomed the government's willingness to engage in dialogue and expressed hope that consultations will continue throughout the reform process. Opposition leader Pascal Affi-N'Guessan described the discussions as a positive step towards building greater consensus on electoral governance. The consultations mark the beginning of a broader process that could reshape the rules governing elections in Côte d'Ivoire.
Augustine Colley with that report by WDR's Master Aristin Play in Abidjan. More on election-related development, but this time in Liberia, where the Senate chambers has commenced a public hearing to review the country's electoral law. Among the issues drawing attention are proposed increase in the registration fees for candidates at different levels, the voter registration process, and the reduction in voting hours. As the Senate considers these reforms, the political parties, media advocates, and citizens are weighing in on the matter. WDR's Abraham Packer reports.
On Monday, the Liberian Senate began the review of several electoral proposals, including an increase in nomination fees, $15,000 for presidential candidates, $10,000 for vice presidents, $5,000 for senators, and $3,000 for representatives. The measures have drawn criticism from opposition parties, including the Congress for Democratic Change and Alternative National Congress, who warned that the higher fees could limit political participation and block ordinary citizens from contesting elections. Concerns have also been raised over plans to restrict voter registration to national ID cards and passports. Muriah Yakula is AMC's representative.
this law restricting verifications of passports and national ID card actually is going to disenfranchise thousands of Liberians who may not have access to national ID card or passports in the villages.
The opposition Congress for Democratic Change have a further questioned the proposals to reduce voting hours and to strengthen the time frame for filing electoral complaints. The Press Union of Liberia has urged clearer rules on voter identification and a dispute resolution. Popular reactions remain divided as the Senate consultations continue. As a reminder, the European Union and the development partners had recommended a series of reforms to strengthen the electoral system after the 2023 elections. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
In Guinea, closing arguments continue this Tuesday in the second phase of trial over the September 28, 2009 massacre. In the dock is Colonel Bienvenu Lama. The 6 other officers who were on trial alongside him have all been released. At the opening of proceedings on Monday, the civil party's lawyers called for his conviction and for the charges to be reclassified as crimes against humanity. Christopher Atichu has more in this report.
The civil party's lawyers first recorded that on September 28, 2009, soldiers killed more than 150 civilians at the stadium in Conakry. They added that the day was also marked by other acts of violence, looting and serious human rights abuses, which they describe as crimes against humanity. They argue that Colonel Bienvenu Lama was complicit in the massacre and are therefore calling for the charges to be reclassified as crimes against humanity. The civil party is also requesting a heavy prison sentence for Colonel Lama, as well as a financial compensation for victims ranging from 1 to 2 billion Guinean francs, depending on the damage suffered, including rape, torture, disappearances and theft. They further demanded medical care for surviving victims who are still ill, the construction of a medical monument in honor of those killed, and that the Guinean state guarantee the enforcement of any civil damages awarded. The trial is set to continue on Tuesday with further arguments from both the civil party and the defense.
Christopher Atichi with a report filed in by our Conakry correspondent Cherno Alpha Ibrahim Abalde.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Crossing over to the Sahel, Burkina Faso has summoned the European Union ambassador in Ouagadougou to protest a European Parliament resolution and comments by its member Christophe Gomar on the country's security situation. Authorities strongly rejected the remarks, describing them as false, inaccurate, and a violation of the principle of non-interference. The government says the statements are unacceptable and damaging at a time of ongoing tension over security and governance concerns. Let's join Veronique Njai for details.
The European Union ambassador in Ouagadougou responded early Monday to the foreign minister's summons. Philippe Prochain came to explain the remarks made by European Parliament member Christophe Gomard, who accuses the Burkinabe authorities of failing in the fight against terrorism.
I took the opportunity to once again explain how the European Union works. As I told the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have taken note of everything he said, and I will pass on the information he provided to my superiors in Brussels.
Burkina Faso describes French General Christophe Gomard's comments as erroneous. According to Burkina Faso's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Karamoko Jean-Marie Traoré, by adopting a resolution based on this assessment, the European Parliament is violating the principle of non-interference.
By acting this way, the European Parliament has violated the principle of non-interference. The arguments presented to members of Parliament are based on completely erroneous information. It is also a sign of contempt towards us, reflecting a lack of understanding of the efforts currently underway.
The resolution in question was adopted on June 18. In it, The European Parliament also condemns the deterioration of civic space in Burkina Faso and calls on the Burkinabe authorities to guarantee freedom of association and expression.
A report by our Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba, voiced by Veronique Njai. In neighboring Benin, the northern region has again recorded a security breach after unidentified armed men attack a police station in Fort-Bouré. Sources say the attackers stormed the station briefly, overpowered officers on duty, causing material damage before fleeing the scene. While the situation is now under control, authorities have launched an assessment to determine the extent of the damage. Francis Boniface reports.
According to sources, heavily armed men late Saturday, precisely around 11 p.m., stormed the police station and opened fire on officers, reportedly entering the facility from the rear. Security personnel responded but were forced to withdraw due to the intensity of the attack. The assailants then searched the premises before fleeing. They are believed to have taken away unspecified equipment, although details have not yet been confirmed. No deaths or injury were recorded, but material damage has been reported. Contacted by WADR, the head of the Fort-Bouré arrondissement, Sao Sabi Koku, confirmed the incident and said an inventory is on the way to determine what may have been taken. He added that calm has returned to the area and that the station has been resecured by defense and security forces. The Fort-Bouré station is among several security posts in northern Benin that have been repeatedly targeted in similar attacks. Authorities continue to describe the security situation in northern Benin as a major concern, with efforts ongoing to strengthen the response to extremist violence and improve cross-border security cooperation in the region.
Francis Boniface reporting. Elsewhere, hundreds of Nigerians awaiting evacuation from South Africa stayed the protest on Monday over delays in the government's repatriation program. The protesters say they feel abandoned and stranded, despite early assurances that all willing Nigerians would be brought home by the end of June. The government's decision to repatriate its citizens follows rising anti-migrant tensions in parts of the country that have triggered similar action from countries such as Ghana and Mozambique. As Yechinu Sasetu reports, pressure is mounting on authorities in Abuja to ensure the safe return of the remaining migrants.
Dozens of Nigerians gathered at the Nigerian High Commission in Pretoria, South Africa, to protest delays in the evacuation process. The protesters say they have yet to receive clear information on when the next evacuation flight will depart after the repatriation of 258 Nigerians on June 11. Responding to the concerns, Nigeria's acting High Commissioner to South Africa, Alexander Temitope, says authorities are working to resolve logistical and documentation issues.
We had started screening for about 3 to 4 weeks now, and it was going on smoothly. We've captured a lot of people. We were not allowed to do it alone. We were asked to do it with the host government. The repatriation has not been cancelled. It's going on. It's only temporarily suspended.
However, President of the Nigerian community in South Africa, Smart Nwobu, says the ambassador's remarks have done little to reassure those waiting to return home.
We are not satisfied because a date, we were expecting to hear a concrete answer. He gave us technical answers. A date was not given.
Having exhausted their savings and living under constant tension, the protesters appealed to the government to urgently ensure their return to Nigeria.
It's not a protest, it's not a fight, it's an appeal.
They have not given us any concrete reason why this second batch of repatriation is not happening.
They took everything. They dictated everything.
With the June 30 deadline approaching, the over 700 awaiting evacuation say they are hoping for swift action to match the assurances they have received. For WADR, Yechini Sasetu in Abuja.
You're listening to Newslink here on West Africa, the Macross Radio on 94.9 FM, online at wadr.org and on Facebook and YouTube. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Burkina Faso's foreign ministry summons the EU representative in Ouagadougou over remarks it says undermine a state authority. Unidentified armed men attacked a security post in northern Benin. In Ghana, recent flooding results in several deaths and building collapses. And Nigerians in South Africa stage a protest over delay in evacuation arrangements as June deadline approaches. Well, still ahead in the news, we have press review, guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Now, flooding triggered by days of heavy rainfall has left at least 20 people dead and thousands affected across Ghana's central and western regions. The Central Regional Directorate of the Disaster Management Organization reports widespread destruction across 13 districts. Meanwhile, authorities in the western region are blaming illegal mining activities for worsening floods that have displaced more than 1,000 residents in Samboy. Well, from Accra, Nadi Dictator reports.
What began as days of intense rainfall has left hundreds of families homeless and renewed concerns about Ghana's preparedness for the annual rainy season. In the central region, the National Disaster Management Organization, NATMO, says at least 18 people have died, 877 others affected, and 58 buildings collapsed following 3 days of torrential rainfall that battered several communities between June 19 and 21. Of the 23 districts in the region, 13 recorded varying degrees of destruction, with Cape Coast registering the highest death toll. NATMO says many affected families urgently need food, clothing, mattresses and other relief supplies. Emmanuel Kwesi-Mensah Dawood is the Central Regional Director of NATMO.
So far, we have recorded 18 fatalities. The Cape Coast alone has 6. These 18 fatalities are as a result of building collapses, drowning, mudslides, falling trees, and other unfortunate incidences.
Authorities have also issued a 2-week ultimatum to residents living in flood-prone areas to relocate. Buildings on waterways, drainage channels, and other unsafe structures identified as contributing to the floods are expected to be demolished. Meanwhile, in Samraboy in the western region, 2 people lost their lives and more than 1,200 people were displaced after the Tano and Samre rivers burst their banks, submerging homes and destroying property. Western Regional Minister Joseph Nelson blamed the scale of the disaster on environmental degradation caused by illegal mining activities along the Tano River.
The Galamsey activities on the River Tano must be curtailed, and if it has to be done, of course, government will always take the lead, but the people themselves must also be part of the solution. It's become a norm that when things happen in communities, people look on unconcerned. They don't talk, they don't speak about it, they don't speak against it.
As floodwaters recede, authorities are warning that without stronger enforcement of environmental and planning regulations, communities will remain vulnerable to recurring flood disasters. For WADR, Nadi Tete, Accra.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, today's press review takes us back to Liberia for a review of major trending headlines on the front pages of the national dailies. Here is Abraham Parker.
This edition of Press Review features 3 local dailies. We begin with the news with these stories. Probe in U.S. $19.2 million drugs bust intensifies as Vice President Joel Howard Taylor proposes rise in candidate registration ahead of 2029 elections. President Bouaka demands affordable health care, receives proposed national health insurance bill, and communities left flooded as the dam pool rocks Monrovia and adjacent parts. Our next stop is the Inquirer newspaper with these stories. Labor and Youth Ministries seal partnership for 3,000 jobs expansion. Liberia takes West Africa's anti-corruption voice to continental leadership. Our next and last stop is the Daily Observer newspaper. Finance Minister Augustine Kpei-Gafuan links budget growth to decentralization drive. Bouaka suspends NOCA board member over Rabat International Airport U.S. $19 million drug bust. And why are the drugs still being kept? Simeon Freeman pressures Bouaka's government over delayed destruction of seized narcotics. That's according to the Daily Observer newspaper. Well, that does it for this edition of Press Review from Liberia's capital, Monrovia. Thanks so kindly for joining us.
Many thanks, Abraham Parker, for the press review in Liberia.
Politics analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
West Africa is moving deeper into the 2026 rainy season with growing concern over early warning systems as flood risk increase across the region. So far, cities including Abidjan, Accra, Niamey, Lomé and Lagos have experienced flooding, leading to loss of lives and significant property damage. Well, the question now remains about how effective early warning systems and flood preparedness are across West Africa. Several urban areas continue to record rising flood levels. Olamide Martins Ogunle is an associate professor, director climate change and extractives at Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa.
The flood risk across West Africa this year is going to be significant, and that is not to raise fears, particularly as rainfall intensifies across, shared river basins, such as the one we have in Niger, some part of Senegal, and even in Côte d'Ivoire that you mentioned. So it is feared that countries including Nigeria, Benin Republic, Niger Republic, Ghana, Mali, and some part of Burkina Faso are going to experience elevated exposure this year due to saturated soil, of course, and due to the rise in river levels, and also due to, increasing erratic rainfall patterns. No thanks to climate change, everything now seems to be on the excessive side. So this year, like last year, we expect fall, and also going by the feedbacks that we are getting from institutions responsible for weather prediction, for instance, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, and the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency, and of course from findings across the ECOWAS states. We have been warned that 2025 is going to be a child's play compared to the flood that might happen this year.
But what are some of the other factors, say, country to country, that may increase the risk of flooding, as reported already in Abidjan, in Accra, the capital of Ghana, and Niamey, the capital of Niger?
It's going to be a combination of several factors: rise in sea level, environmental factor, and also governance-related factors. They are all going to combine to drive flooding across West Africa this year. And this includes increasingly intense seasonal rainfall that have been linked to climate vulnerability and rapid and often unplanned urbanization. If you are familiar with Nigeria, Lagos, where I'm joining this call from, we seem to be driving very fast on our drive towards urbanization. And we are filling up our spaces. We are not paying adequate attention to our drainage infrastructure. There's pressure on our expansion, on our settlement expansion. And of course, I know this is the reality also in Accra, in Bamako, in Niamey that you mentioned. Environmental degradation, including deforestation, will also play a huge role. Part of the area, we are experiencing desertification, but then water, we have to come down through the wetland. The remaining will leak through the wetland. And of course, there will be structural vulnerabilities that will be intensified by climate change as well. So these are just some of the factors that will contribute to the recurrence this year, and that's quite unfortunate.
You did actually say that several meteorological organizations in respective countries have warned that the flooding situation may intensify this year, meaning that we do have early warning systems in place. But the question is, are governments, per your assessment, utilizing this report or indicators to plan better or to reduce the impact of flooding? Have you seen that?
No, and I think that is where the problem is. We have government agencies that are operating in silos. There is no coordination, there is no communication, and there is no exchange of information. For instance, NIMET would year in, year out predict flooding and even issue cautions. But then you have NEMA, and I'm talking about Nigeria now. You have NEMA, whose mandate is to react to incidences that have been cautioned by NIMET. Everybody seems to be working in silo, in isolated intervention, so to say. Yes, there are warning systems in West Africa through NIMET, through the National Disaster Management Agency in Ghana, for instance, but effectiveness remains uneven. We have capacity to make forecasts, but then what do we do with those forecasts? What do we do with the information, with the caution? There are questions about coordination that we need to ask ourselves. And we've seen for a fact how vulnerable populations still do not receive warnings on time. Yes, there are cautions that have been released only to the privileged few who are in the urban centers who could read data. But how about those who are in the suburbs, those who are in the communities? What deliberate efforts are being made by the state, even by individuals, organizations, to communicate these forecasts to them? So we are not in short supply of warning system, like you rightly mentioned. It's about what we do with those cautions. It's about our responses to those cautions. And more importantly, we expect that government agencies will now begin to have handshake and to work with other responsible agencies of government to educate the masses on what should be done, and even to go further, and enforce dialogue on the state by ensuring that the state commits to resources that would provide, drainage infrastructures and the like. Otherwise, it's going to be a yearly release of caution that will address little or nothing.
Olamide Martins Ogunlade is Associate Director, Climate Change and Extractives at Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa. Well, in the sporting world, football lovers are buzzing with thrilling performances and some shocking results thus so far. Well, my colleague Imo Edet is in the studio to discuss the trends. Good morning. Good afternoon, Imo. It's good to have you here.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. And good afternoon to you, our listeners and viewers on YouTube. Now, 3 excited matches lead up the tournament on Monday, with Argentina, Egypt, and France all claiming important victories as the race for the knockout stage gathers pace. Defending champions Argentina continued a strong campaign with a 2-0 win over Austria in Group J. Captain Lionel Messi inspired the South Americans as they strengthened their grip on a qualification spot.
We've seen some older results as well. Please tell us more about the particular in Group G and Group K as well.
All right, we'll have a lot for you. Let's start with Group G. Egypt produced a remarkable comeback to defeat New Zealand 3-1 after falling behind. The Pharaohs responded with a 3-second half goals to move to the top of group standing. And for the Group K you talked about, yes, France secured their place in the round of 32 of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which many say now the World Cup is just starting, with a comfortable win 3-0 over Iraq in Philadelphia. Well, Kylian Mbappe scored twice, while Ousmane Dembele added a third goal as Didier Deschamps' side claimed their second consecutive win of the tournament. Well, despite a lengthy weather delay caused by a storm, France remained in control throughout the match and confirmed their status as one of the tournament favorites.
Indeed, and Imo, Senegal faced uphill battle after Norway's defeat. Of course, a 3-2 defeat to Norway. This follows the 3-1 defeat to France.
The entire country has been quiet, I can tell you that for sure. Well, we saw Haaland playing against Senegal. It wasn't Norway against Senegal as it would have been. We saw him scoring twice for his country, while Ismail Assar netted a brace for the Teranga Lions. Despite a late fight back, Senegal fell to a second straight defeat. Now, the result sends Norway into the round of 32 and leaves Senegal needing a win against Iraq. As a matter of fact, we understand that they must score up to at least like 5 goals, to sit comfortably on the table and perhaps qualifying to the next round.
And finally, before I let you go, we are looking forward to some exciting fixtures quickly, including Ghana and England.
Exactly. Portugal is playing Uzbekistan 5 p.m. today. England versus Ghana. The ultimate, that's one we're all waiting for. Panama, Croatia, and Colombia versus DRC. That will be 2 a.m. in the morning.
Well, I am not waiting for that. Many thanks, Imo, for the sports news. We've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Maria Makande for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR. We also stream live at wadr.org. I am Sankule Jibril Janko. Good afternoon.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. In the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County, and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Baft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening to Newslink.
Stay connected to West Africa wherever you are.